This is Time Warner Cable's Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. I'm glad you're with us. Our guest, Adam Schiff, he's a member of the United States Congress, has been one since 2000, and I remember that race, sir. It was very expensive. You were going up against an incumbent Republican. You defeated him. I understand was it the most expensive race in House history at that time?
It was and may still be.
Oh, really?
It was quite a Donnybrook.
But let's compare that to now. Why is it that in 2000 fundraising was challenging, but now it's even more of a morass of confusion?
Well, unfortunately, while we've taken some steps forward in campaign finance reform, we've taken enormous steps backward now, and it is actually quite a bit worse than it was even then. In that race, my opponent spent about $6.8 million.
Wow.
I was the discount candidate at $4.3 million.
As a discount.
But there were $5 million in independent expenditures, and those are what concerned me the most, because whatever my opponent said, people could evaluate the source, and the same was true with whatever I said. But the independent expenditures, nobody was held accountable for.
But at that time, wasn't it true that if it was an ad, for example, by an independent expenditure, one could then look at the source of the funding from the group that donated money to that campaign committee?
That is true, although a lot of those expenditures, and this was certainly true in my race, took place so late in the campaign that by the time you found out who was spending the money, the election was already over.
But now we know that was it 2010? The U.S. Supreme Court came out with a decision that we know as Citizens United. That really changed the landscape.
It did. It doubled down really on a prior decision, a 30-year-old decision, Buckley versus Vallejo. In that case, the Supreme Court struck down part of a Watergate-era reform that put a limit on campaign expenditures. It said that a limit on campaign contributions was constitutional because a contribution could corrupt. But an independent expenditure couldn't possibly corrupt, couldn't even give the appearance of impropriety, and therefore there was no compelling interest in allowing the government to regulate it. But the court in that decision said—
Are you talking about the 2010?
In the Buckley case,
right.
If this proves not to be the case over time, we'll have to reconsider.
Right.
And certainly this has proved not to be the case.
Right.
They're, as a practical matter, distinguishing between Sheldon Adelson making a $5,000 contribution to Newt Gingrich and Sheldon Adelson being able to spend $20 million on Gingrich's campaign.
And he is the Las Vegas mogul that has spent a lot of money on very significant races.
Exactly. And it's a distinction now without a difference.
So right now, there are no campaign limits for independent expenditures, but there are directly to campaigns?
Exactly.
And they can be anonymous?
They can be anonymous now and are under the current state of affairs post Citizens United and post these other court decisions.
A First Amendment right to donate to whom you choose with your money, and the First Amendment right to be anonymous?
Well, there is certainly a right to make a contribution, and there is some equivalence ever since Buckley with money and speech. But I don't think it's the case, and I don't think the court historically has said that Congress can't put any limit on this and can't make it transparent so that we know who is trying to influence our elections.
But the court did, and now you're looking to amend the Constitution.
Yes. I mean, what I had hoped, I think what many had hoped, is that the Supreme Court would revisit this artificial distinction between expenditure and contribution. But instead, in Citizens and in the Montana case that followed, they have only doubled down on this and went beyond it, saying that corporate expenditures are the same as persons and individuals' expenditures.
Well, as Mitt Romney said, corporations are people. I mean, that's what the Supreme Court has said.
That's the problem. And in order to deal with that problem, you do have to amend the Constitution. And I've introduced an amendment drafted by Professor Larry Tribe
from
Harvard to really deal with exactly that problem.
Come back, we'll talk more about it. His name is Adam Schiff, member of the U.S. Congress. I'm Brad Pomerance. Thanks for watching Time Warner Cable's Local Edition.